Hello, everyone. Happy Saturday. Hope you all are doing great. I am Mahbub, today's host of the session Meet the Global Leader. This webinar is actually about sharing the journey and impactful journey of individual person, their professional experiences, and how they're doing things differently, and sharing their stories of what they do. Actually, it's focusing on university going students. They are our main audience. They understand how people do things and why they are doing different things, and we try to connect their skills, how they're using it, and their activities, so that impactful activities, so that they can visualize and they can also follow these in their real life. So today we have invited Ms. Shannon Olsson. She's the founder and global director of the Eco Network and special scientific envoy to India of for Danish Academy of Technical Sciences. And very interesting thing is she's basically she has more than 20 years experience of as a chemical ecologist. She's a science consultant, sustainability identity advisor, and international speaker who helps organizations, companies, institutes, and governments across the globe to implement empathetic science into their climate action and sustainability planning efforts. So many things to learn from her today. So Sharon, welcome to our session.
Thank you so much. I'm extremely pleased to be here. Thank you for your patience with the rescheduling. I've been really wanting to speak to your wonderful organization and the students that you have. I have, as I mentioned before I joined this session, I have a lot of friends from Bangladesh. There's some great sustainability work that you're doing across the
Definitely.
country. Very impressive, and so we're learning from people from Bangladesh all the time, and hopefully I can come and visit you in person since I'm not very far away in India many
Yep.
times.
You're
I do
welcome.
have a presentation. I'm going to try to share it. It's interactive, so if the
Yeah.
audience members out there want to interact, there's actually a way to do this. There's a site for you to go to, and we'll see how it goes. We'll just play it by ear, and I'll see how many people are able to interact.
Yep.
So I'm going to share my screen here. Um, and present.
Yep.
All right, so, and let me see. Um, so, if you want to join this session, you can either scan this QR code on your side if you are watching it like literally on your phone or something like this, or you can actually go to this site. The site is ahaslides.com /SED echo, all capital letters. And that would be great because I do have some interactive questions for you here. And you can go to this either from a laptop or your phone. I'm assuming you're somehow connected to the internet if you're listening to me right now. And I'll just wait for a minute or two and just see if people can join. And then I will go on and I'll make sure that this stays up here the entire time. I'll keep this on the left-hand side here, this QR code as I start talking. So yes, hi everybody. My name is Shannon Olsson, and I am the global director of something called the ECHO Network. The ECHO Network is a science and society network. I'm actually trained as a scientist. I'm trained specifically as an ecologist, and what I do actually mainly is work with biodiversity. And it is my experience working with biodiversity in India. I fell in love with Indian biodiversity when I went to visit there early on in the last decade, and it really caused an entire shift in how I thought about how my science was actually affecting people. Because the reason I became a scientist was I actually wanted to contribute to the world. I became a scientist because I wanted to help uh, make the world better for people and for nature. And I honestly became a little frustrated about the limitations I had as a scientist to be able to do that. So um, I I hope that you find this journey of mine and this talk about what we're doing and this drive to build knowledge-based societies for sustainability, and maybe you can see how you can use it in your own lives and your own careers going forward. So I see that we haven't had anyone join, so I'm actually just going to do this as a thought experiment, which you can do on your own, and I'll just move forward with this. So okay, so wherever you are right now, I'll just ask you what is knowledge to you? What does that word knowledge mean? When you think of I have knowledge, what does it mean? Maybe it means power. It can mean money. It can mean help. It can mean innovation. It can mean creativity. It can mean work. It can mean so many different things, right? Knowledge gives us the ability to be able to do things better, to be able to do new things, to be able to understand each other, to be able to understand the world, to be able to know about our past, to be able to know about our future. There's many things that knowledge gives us, and that is why it's so important for us, and why many of you are in school right now, right? You're trying to gain the knowledge in order to have successful careers. So why do we need knowledge? Well, we just talked about that, right? Knowledge is extremely important for everyone, no matter who you are. Understanding your place in the world, understanding the world around you, understanding how you fit in society is really essential for us to be able to live better on this planet. And that's why, of course, education is one of the most important things for sustainability, making sure that we have education for everyone. And not everybody needs to go to college. I don't mean that kind of knowledge. Not everybody needs to get a PhD like I do. That's not necessary. It's necessary for me to be a scientist. That's not what I mean, but being providing the awareness, providing the knowledge of how people can live better in their communities, in the world around them, how they can utilize the newest knowledge that's out there to make their lives better. That's what we mean. And that requires lots of types of education, both formal education, but also informal education in terms of awareness and communication with the public at large. So when I think about some of the knowledge that we've had in the past, right? So I mean, knowledge isn't settled. It's not like we know something and then that's it. It stays the same for the rest of the world in front of us. And here we see this image of a flat world, right? We all know, I hope everybody in the audience knows that the world is round, right? It's not flat. But for hundreds of years, people thought the world was flat. This image of, ships, it's somewhere in Europe, this was clearly done, that the ships are falling off the edge of the world as they got far enough away from Europe. People believed this for several hundred years until there was enough knowledge that was disseminated by lots of different types of people, showing that of course the world has curvature. You can see that the ships start to disappear over the horizon, and various other pieces of evidence showed us that the world was round. So a knowledge does change over the time, and it has a big effect on society. What we think we know has a big effect on how we treat each other. This is one of my favorite factoids from biology. It used to be thought that how humans were made was actually entirely driven by the sperm of a man, that the man's sperm contained a tiny human in it called a homunculus. And this human was so tiny, and he or she was wrapped up inside this sperm, and then that got deposited into the egg of a woman, and then it just kind of grew from there, right? They really felt that women were empty vessels that just took all of the male information inside of them, and then that's how the human was produced. And it wasn't until, honestly, the 19th century when microscopy became good enough for us to see that actually the egg and the sperm are both equal partners in this, that without both of them giving both equal genetic information, a human being cannot be formed. So the woman's job is just as important as the man's. And you can, I think, understand how this could have very profound effects on how we think about the role of women in society. And this too, this is the thought about how we get sick, right? So for many, many years, we didn't understand microbiology, right? We've all been going through this terrible pandemic. It's probably why you're so comfortable listening to me online right now, because the pandemic created this huge revolution all across the world to actually being able to work remotely. And we know that the pandemic was transmitted by a virus, but this idea of microbes, viruses, bacteria, fungi being transmit disease was not really well understood. And for many years, they thought this was driven by things like bad humors or bad mists or bad feelings, you know. And so here's an image of different types of humors that they felt were contributing to sickness. And of course, without the knowledge of microbiology, a lot of our understanding of modern healthcare and actually health and well-being of society could not be driven forward. And finally, this one I bring forward because it also deals with my own ancestry. I have Irish ancestry, okay, and for many years, the Irish people in various parts of the world were thought to be, you know, lesser than, and they were discriminated against for many years, as are many types of people across the world still discriminated against today. And one of the justifications they made for this was actually the shape of people's head, right? For many years, they felt that the intelligence and the worthiness of an individual could be gleaned by the shape of their head. And this idea persisted for a long time. And there used to be so called doctors who could measure the shape of a person's head and tell you if they were going to be a criminal, if they were going to be intelligent, if they were going to be kind. Of course, all of this is completely made up until we understood neuroscience and how the brain works. Now we understand that what makes a person good, bad, intelligent has nothing to do with the shape of their head or the color of their skin or even where they come from. It has to do a lot also with how their brain works, right? So you know, this is the idea behind here. What all these concepts have in common is everything I just presented to you was completely wrong, right? Knowledge is not a static thing. So you can't just depart knowledge to people and have it set there. It's changing all the time. And sometimes knowledge is really wrong and can lead to things like racism, as I just showed you. So we are constantly learning new things all the time. It's changing the way we understand our world. And it's very important for us all to be on the same page and understanding how that knowledge is changing. And there's also, you know, if you think about some of your favorite innovations, right? When you think about things that have just changed the world, you know, and some of these are science and technology innovations, but there's many types of innovations, right? You know, we can have innovations like the internet, right, which obviously has revolutionized the way I talk to you today. There's also changes in things you know, changes in political strategies and how we vote and how we arrange our societies. So there's all sorts of innovations that are coming out, and they're also changing all the time. Think of how quickly we are changing our innovations just in terms of computing, right, and the rise of artificial intelligence, and understanding those innovations. Maybe not every detail. I don't understand artificial intelligence in detail because I'm not the type of a scientist, but I understand enough of it to realize, you know, that it has a very important place, maybe in my own life and also in my career. So these discoveries, one of the things when I brought up things like the internet or germ theory or neuroscience, they all had one thing in common, and that they're all addressing a specific type of problem, right? They're really addressing a specific thing in society. But that's really where my talk with you and my discussion with you comes today, is that we are no longer really in a world that is able to take individual discoveries separately. We are in a world of profound change, right? These are three headlines that just came out off my news feed on my phone in the past, you know, 6 days of this new year, 2024. We have a story about China being the biggest polluter in the world, also having its hottest year on record, as have many countries across the world, including, you know, Bangladesh and many other countries, India included. And also, just like, I mean, Bangladesh is really very much under the throes of climate change. And this forcing millions to flee their homes is something that actually is absolutely happening across Asia, South Asia, and Southeast Asia, as it is in other parts of the world as well. And our biodiversity, like our forests, are disappearing. So these are scary headlines, right? They're terrifying. And maybe many of you out there are very afraid of the future. And I understand that these are scary things to think about. And they also seem largely out of your control, right? You can't affect, pollution on a country level, and you can't affect forest loss on a global level. And this is really where we think about these problems as something called a polycrisis. So polycrisis is a word that's been around for a while, but it's recently gained in its momentum in terms of explaining what we're undergoing right now across the world. The idea is that it is not just one problem that we solved. I mentioned earlier about how innovations have often been designed to solve a specific problem. For example, a vaccine or a computer or a type of voting style. Okay, but now we see that actually there are many of these problems all happening at the same time. We have environmental problems like global warming and biodiversity loss. We have inequality. We have food insecurity. We have refugees. We have pandemics. We have things like inflation and debt. We have things like cyber threats. We have energy vulnerability. All of these things are happening across the world at the same time. And this is called a global crisis. And that means not that we can't solve it. It's not too many problems to solve, but we have to think of new ways of thinking about solving problems. It's not a single problem that we solve, like we have to come up with a vaccine. It's actually many problems that have to be thought of because they all interact with each other, right? Global warming has an effect on social equality, and it also has an effect on our economy, as we know. And our economy affects how we can deal with global warming. So all of these things are interlinked. And that means we have to use something called systems thinking in order to tackle this. And this is really the subject of my talk today. And this is because we also face two problems right now. One of the problems is that our society in general, not just you and me, but really all of us, we have trouble addressing systemic problems because they are very big and they are very multidimensional. They have many parts to them. And also, the knowledge creators, which are generally the academic world, right? It's really the academics that create and generate the knowledge. We are not trained to address them, which means we're not generating the knowledge needed to address these problems. And this is where the idea of the network and where I come from really is stemming from. So let me take each problem on its own so you can understand. So first of all, our society having trouble addressing systemic problems. So I'm gonna use this example of my cat. Okay, this is my cat, Moonriken. Okay, so he's very cute, right? And he's also a little devil. Okay, in the night, he actually will spend lots of time, I don't know, just terrorizing our apartment. He'll knock lamps over, he'll knock things off the kitchen counter. And then I get up in the morning, and sometimes, sometimes it's just a pillow, sometimes it's a vase. Okay, so sometimes he breaks stuff, and I can't yell at him the next morning because it's been maybe several hours since he was doing whatever he was doing and I didn't catch him in the act. And that cause and effect is not there. So unfortunately, I can't yell at him for something that happened way before. And the same is true for these systemic problems with society. It's not, if it was a simple fact of that, pollution, air pollution, people just started dropping dead from it. If people just dropped over for air pollution, we would be fixing air pollution much faster. If it was that, you throw a piece of plastic on the ground and suddenly the air gets warmer. Okay, if it was that simple of a connection, we would be making changes much faster. But of course, it's not that way. It is not as if plastic pollution suddenly creates a climate change issue. There's actually many, many, many steps in between that also have to happen. And that makes it really hard because people don't see the cause and effect. And you can't just address one thing and expect the change on the other end. So this inability to match cause and effect is very, very hard for the public to deal with, and even for us knowledge creators as well. And when it comes to education, okay, so I'm just going to show you this as an example. This is actually in a very specific world of biomedical sciences. That already sounds very specific, biomedical sciences. And I just looked on the web and I found this percentage of funding that goes out for different aspects of biomedical sciences. And look at how many types of sciences there are just in biomedical sciences. We're not talking about all of knowledge itself, you know, economics and health and art and history and sociology and, you know, and chemistry and technology and all of these very big disciplines. This is biomedical sciences, and still it's getting broken up into endocrinology, biophysics, virology, clinical research, immunology, because our knowledge is getting so great that people have to specialize further and further and further into specific areas. And the further you go in your educational career, the more specialized you become. You may start out getting education in lots of different areas, everything from religion to physics. But if you go on and keep going on in your knowledge and getting a master's degree and maybe even a PhD, then you really specialize in something like epidemiology, right? Because you're starting to learn as much as you can about a very specific field. And that means that we are training people not for systems thinking, but for extremely specific thinking in a very specific area. I can tell you the amount of core knowledge that I have now is very small. And I feel like the further I go, I know more and more about less and less information, right? That is really one of the ways that our academic world functions right now. And here's the second problem that I wanted to bring up that relates really to, I think, probably everybody who's listening to this talk right now. So I don't know if you see me, I'm standing there. I'm giving a talk, as you saw from my title, I am a special scientific envoy to the Danish Academy of Technical Sciences, and I gave a panel session with the former principal scientific advisor of India, who you see on my right, and several other dignitaries from the Danish Academy about policy, science, and policy last year. And this isn't the story, but when I looked up from where I was standing, I looked up upon this mural of the Danish Academy in the 19th century, when really all of the formal academies across the world were starting to be formed in Europe and some, I guess, in the United States and some in Asia as well. And if I looked at this picture and I thought, this is also the problem, right? So not only is our academic world becoming more and more and more specialized, but it was created for these people. These people are all essentially older white men. And society today, it's not me. I don't see myself in this picture. There's no women in this picture at all. And there's definitely no people of any other heritage other than a very white European heritage. And that means that much of our knowledge is being still created by and for people in this room, in this picture, and not for the diversity of thoughts and feelings and backgrounds and opinions that actually exist on our planet today and that are absolutely needed to be taken into account to address sustainability issues. So we have this big problem right now. Number one, our society has trouble addressing systemic problems because of the cause and effect. And also our academic system has been designed essentially formed by a bunch of old white men. And we have not changed the way we do education since the 19th century. The way if you're in a university right now, it doesn't matter where you're in a university. You could be in a university in Bangladesh, in Cairo, Egypt, in Ohio, in the US. It's still basically the same. It is developed for men to discuss opinions and debate with each other. It's not necessarily designed for the type of learning that we need to have now to address these systemic problems. So we need to change, right? We need a massive rethinking in order to address sustainability across the world, especially to address sustainability in places like Bangladesh and India, where we're not necessarily being represented by how the knowledge is being created. So we number one, we need to find ways for society to embrace knowledge in order to address systemic problems. How do we get society to be able to do that cause and effect when it is so hard to do? And secondly, we need to train and untrained students of all kinds. Students at undergraduate level, and even adults in villages and cities, to think systemically, to be able to think about this big picture, to understand how what they're doing fits with other knowledge. And we really need to define what knowledge is, right? It can't be defined by those old white guys in that painting. It has to be defined by a much more diverse, a much more comprehensive way of thinking, bringing in things like traditional knowledge and art and history and literature and music, and understanding that that kind of knowledge is also important to us being able to deal with systemic problems. And this also really comes from my own experience as a scientist. I'm an ecologist, as I mentioned very early in this talk, and I spent a lot of time all over India, doing research in various ecosystems. Here, this might look familiar to some of you. This is actually the Himalayas. This is the eastern Himalayas. This is Sikkim, so not so far from Bangladesh, really, and as the crow flies. And we were up very, very high in elevation, and you can see we're looking at flowers right now. These are rhododendrons, and these are some of my lab members. This is a postdoc Josephine, and also Shorid. He's from West Bengal, and they were examining the traits of flowers that are attractive to pollinators, to insect pollinators. And it was this beautiful, as you can see, this beautiful rhododendron valley filled with all types of flowers. There were yaks there were sunbirds, there was butterflies and bumblebees and all sorts of beautiful insects. And we did this research there. And then we came back the next year. And this is what that same site looked like. I don't know if you can see up in the top corner there. Do you see that green, the greenhouse there in the top corner? See, the greenhouse is there too. So this is the same exact place, okay? And it looks completely altered. I mean, the perspective is slightly different, but it's also that the entire valley was destroyed the year I came back next year to do my research, because someone had decided that there should be a parking lot for trucks going through, delivering goods to various villages higher up in the Himalayas, and they needed to have a parking place. So they just got rid of this valley. And when I asked them about, the decision-making process that they went through for this, it wasn't really clear who decided it and why they decided it and what kind of, methodology they used to make this decision. So here I was, a scientist studying biodiversity, trying to understand biodiversity, and the biodiversity just disappeared because of someone else's decisions. And that's really the moment in my career that I realized that I can do two things. I can keep studying biodiversity as a scientist, doing my little studies, writing my papers for, the other white men in the audience, as we can say, and or I can really see how can I use my knowledge, how can I work with other people who have different types of knowledge, and see how we can make better decisions about our planet. How do we make better decisions? Maybe there needed to be a parking lot. I don't actually know. My problem was actually that nobody gave me an answer that seemed reasonable. There didn't seem to be any rational reason behind it. And that's what we need to have. We need to have better reasons for why we do things in this planet today. And that's what's going to help us lead to sustainability. It can't just be driven by whoever speaks the loudest or whoever has the most money or the most power or even the most knowledge. It should be driven from a point of collective understanding of the issues involved. So what I set out to do with many other people in about 2019, right as the pandemic was just getting started, is to really think of a new way to build knowledge-based societies. How do we create societies that can utilize knowledge in a better way to make decisions about themselves, about their communities, and about the world around them? And this really needs to be done from a holistic perspective, a systems perspective. And it means we need to bring people together. So number one, we need to understand what community needs are. What are the needs that people actually have? What are people dealing with right now on the ground right today? And then we need to understand, what do we all agree on? Right? We have to start from a point of agreement. If you're going to work with other people, we have to work on something that everybody agrees is an important thing to work on, because that's the only way it will work. So you have to get shared values going. And then you also have to understand what's going on out there, right? You have to be able to assess the current efforts that are happening both at the community level, but also at the state and national and even global level. What innovations are available? What are people doing in other places, in other countries? And then define, what are the gaps? What are we lacking? Why have we not solved this problem for us, for our country, for our planet, whatever the scale is that we're working on? And then we need to develop a goal that we all agree on and go towards it. And that is really the way to build at the society level knowledge and building a community. And this is what is known as a community of practice. So this is what actually the Echo Network was designed to do. It was designed to create something called a community of practice, which is a group of individuals who work together consistently, understanding needs of their community, sharing values, sharing current efforts, and also working towards goals. A community of practice is simply a group of people. You can have a community of practice of 20 people that decide together to clean up a lake, or you can have a community of practice of over 2,000, which is what our network is. So let me show you how we work a little bit. So we were founded actually at the very highest levels of government. We were initiated by the Principal Scientific Advisor's Office by the Government of India in Delhi. And we were actually founded by some of the largest organizations. You might know Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation. You might have also heard of Unilever. That's a very, very large global corporation, and also by the Government of India and several other partners. They were all founding partners of our network. And we did that so that we could very quickly be able to reach out to various people across the scale from a top-down fashion, and then simultaneously start building a bottom-up sort of participation from community leaders, from farmers, from villagers working across the country of India. And we now are a 2,300 member community, and we have over 1,300 organizations represented. And you can actually see that we are mainly concentrated in India, but we actually have members from 45 countries, including Bangladesh, I'm happy to say. And we do pay attention a lot to what's going on in Bangladesh as well. And here is how the model works. So I mentioned, community needs, values, and things, but this is actually how we go about doing it. And the reason I'm presenting this model to you is just not necessarily that this is the best way of doing things, but so you understand how we've developed our way of thinking, and how, as you go forward in your careers, we all need to be more sustainable. Everybody listening to me right now, we all have to think of ways of living better on this planet. So how can you also think of better ways of interacting with people around you in order to become more sustainable? And so this is why I'm presenting our model, because it might inspire you to adopt some of this in your own ways of thinking. Basically, what we use is the scientific method as our method. If any of you remember learning the scientific method in school, you know, they basically, a scientific method starts by observing a phenomenon, asking questions about it, testing it, analyzing it, and then coming up with some sort of answer or solution, and then starting the process over again. And that's basically what we have. We have observe, plan, hypothesize, experiment, analyze. It's the basic scientific method, but we've converted it into a way to work for a community of practice. So instead of observing a phenomenon like under a microscope or with binoculars or with with a telescope to look at the stars, what we use is we observe the community. So we actually use various scientific communication techniques to go out into the community and observe community needs. We use online. We do a lot of things like Instagram live sessions. We also do public interactions at museums. We also use students. We work with undergraduates, particularly from second and third tier city colleges across the country, and they go literally out into their home communities and have awareness initiatives that we help them design. And through that, we've actually been able to interact with over 118,000 people and get their viewpoints about what their needs are. What are they dealing with in society right now in India? Because our focus for the network, at least for the first few years of our existence, is India. And by putting all of their information together, so we use a series of analytical techniques like semantic analysis, which allows us to parse people's words and phrases and see how they interact with each other. We really were able to pull out four major areas of needs that people across the country of India were all mutually dealing with. And I think these will sound very familiar to you as well. Maybe not the words here, but the idea behind them. So the first one is that people are concerned that their health and well-being is not only affected by themselves, by how they treat their bodies, but it's being affected by the environment around them. It's being affected by the health of animals and plants around them, right? You know, a lot of the pandemic is an animal-borne disease. So we have things like dengue and malaria and lots of zoonotic diseases. And they became very nervous about that their health was not only required the health of themselves, but also the health of the animals and the plants, the environment around them. And that is the idea of one health, that a human's health is one health driven by the health of the environment and all the things around it. So that is one concern that people had. Another concern that people frequently talked about is where their food comes from, right? And they were very concerned because, you know, as you know, especially in India, there's a huge issue with farmers and the loss of income that farmers are facing, and many farmers are leaving the farming profession and coming to places like Bangalore, where I've been based, and taking jobs in IT and other professions because they cannot make enough money to survive as a farmer. But we need food. You know, India is a massive country. It has 1.4 billion people and it's growing, and everybody needs to eat, which means agriculture is really, really important. But people are very concerned about the degeneration of agriculture as a profession, and also that most agricultural techniques we're using to grow that food are degenerative to the environment, right? We use a lot of chemicals, we use a lot of pesticides, we use a lot of fertilizers, we use a lot of techniques that destroy the topsoil and destroy the microbes and even the animals and plants around the farming area. So this idea is, how do we make agriculture regenerative? How do we regenerate the land? How do we regenerate the communities? How do we regenerate the farming profession? And the third one is really close to the question that I brought up with my area in the Himalayas, is that, you know, how do we make better decisions, right? You know, we make decisions at many levels. Every time you decide what to do with your garbage, you're making a decision about your ecosystem. A village makes a decision about its ecosystems when it decides what to do with its land and how it decides to take care of its land, both in the city and around the city or around the village. A country or state will actually make much larger decisions, and even our planet is making decisions on how it's dealing with its ecosystems. And we need to make our decisions based on better knowledge, on more comprehensive knowledge, not only from ecology, but from economics, from the community knowledge, from the traditional knowledge of that's in the area. What do people in their communities feel about this land? All of this needs to be brought into a better way of valuing ecosystems. So that was another need that people also, you know, just like I had noticed it, other people had noticed it as well. And finally, it's just that our economy needs to be more circular. People understood that we cannot keep exhausting our natural resources. We can't keep chopping down trees and using oil and using our natural resources when they're not regenerative. And this is not just about renewable energy. It's about everything. It's about, can we make things more circular? When we wear our clothes, what happens to our clothes after we wear them? Can we make that circular so that the clothes maybe become biodegradable or get reused to make new clothes in a much more efficient fashion, so that we reduce the need for new resources and we recycle, we reuse, we refuse, all of that. So this idea of a circular economy, that is a bioeconomy, because it also takes into account that we cannot keep exhausting our biological resources, our land and other plants and animals, and also us that grow on that land. So this is where the ideas came from. And then we started try doing a planning process. Okay, if these are the ideas, health, agriculture, ecosystems, economy, if those are the areas, how are we going to create a system where people can start working together? What are the shared values? And those shared values coalesced into 4 different organizations. So these are sort of these spokes organizations that were actually created with our network. The last one actually is an existing organization, but we're working with them to also create groups of people who are all sharing the same values for One Health or agriculture or ecosystems. And then they have been doing planning over what things maybe they can do. For example, a dashboard for a dengue-free ward, some testing for dryland agriculture, a web platform for value ecosystems, a textile toolkit for textile circularity, as I just mentioned. So these are ideas that came out of groups of people in our network coming together and deciding that they all agreed on this issue. And then we started doing some hypotheses, like what are the current efforts out there happening? And so we did a series of workshops. We actually brought in even more people, 650 participants. We had over 1,000 introductions between different people to help understand what is going on, what are people doing in society today, not just in India, but across the world relating to these issues. And those actually also stimulated several initiatives, several unique initiatives separate from our network, where people started working in their own areas and their own places to start working on some of these aspects of health and agriculture and ecosystems. And it also allowed us to understand what current efforts were actually happening. And then comes to the testing phase. Okay, so now we have some idea of what people want to do. We have some idea of what the current efforts are. Now we need to come up with our experimentation. How do we develop new knowledge, new technologies, new science, just new knowledge in itself in order to be able to drive sustainability forward? And we do that through students. So we have a global exchange program. So we actually have both students from India, but also from other places in the world. And we call our students ambassadors. And that's because this is a very unique form of education that we bring them through, because they don't stay in a university. They are in the communities that our organizations are working in. They are in the organizations that we have in our network. They are constantly interacting with these different types of people. Some of them are doctors, some of them are artists, some of them are CEOs, understanding these issues from a much more systemic process and getting this. And we have 3 different levels of students. We have master's students. Our master's level students are actually doing preliminary research. They're doing some of that background research, understanding what are the current efforts out there that are happening. Our undergraduates are actually working directly in communities. They're going to communities and understanding the community needs, and also sharing information with the community and seeing how the community deals with that information in an exchange, so that the community is part of the creation of the knowledge as well. And we also have our PhD fellows, which are doing really in-depth research for specific solutions that have been tagged as being very necessary towards driving this knowledge base forward. So these 3 all interact with each other, and they test and they analyze, and they're also implementing the knowledge gaps directly in communities. And this is really important, that we do actually have real communities across the country through those organizations I mentioned that are actually working with us and are constantly having this dialogue with them to understand how they feel about this, what they know. And it's a learning process for all of us. And this is really what a community of practice is. So this is how we do it. We really start by trying to scope community needs, share values with each other, understand, get everybody on the same page, assess current efforts, define the knowledge gaps that are out there, and then develop shared goals and try to address those shared goals directly with communities themselves, really bringing knowledge and academic thinking out of classrooms and universities and bringing it directly into villages and cities, where actually it needs to be in order for us to become more sustainable. And so this is the model. And as you can see, the model starts and ends with the community, because the communities become very important creators of knowledge as well. And this is also a bit of a departure from how we usually think about sustainability. We often think of having people coming up with the knowledge and bringing it out to the people, right? Whereas in reality, if we're going to become more sustainable, the community, our people in our villages, our city dwellers, our people in offices and boardrooms and courtrooms and living rooms, in farm fields, they all have to be part of this process because their knowledge is also important to solving these problems, and they need to be with us from the beginning all the way to the end. So if you think about what drives you, why you're listening to me today, why did you take this, as we are, it's almost 50 minutes now, a little bit less than 50 minutes, 45 minutes that we've been talking. And I say, why have you been doing this? What are you driven by? What excites you? Maybe you're excited by technology. Maybe you're excited by artificial intelligence. Maybe you're excited by economics. Maybe you're excited by innovation and business innovation. Maybe you're excited by people. Maybe you're excited by teaching. Whatever drives you, I want to ask you to get out of your comfort zone, okay? Maybe you are very, very good at numbers, or maybe you're very, very good at language, or maybe you're very, very good at talking to people, right? But really don't settle for just sticking to your lane, right? Yes, it is important to be trained in something. It is important to be very good at a particular topic. But if we're going to solve these problems, you also have to understand. So start listening to what other people are doing. Really listen to them. Don't just talk at them like I'm doing right now, or listen to respond, but listen to understand. How do they go about their day? How do they think? What is their opinion? Go out of your comfort zone and talk with people you don't agree with, who have opinions that you think are awful, okay? Because that helps you to understand where they're coming from, not to agree with them, but to understand them better. Listening is the number one thing that we need to do better on this planet in order to be able to work together. And then start thinking, how does your piece fit with other people? How does what you're doing, what you're passionate about, what you're skilled in, how does it fit with what they're doing? Are you complementing what they're doing in some way? Are you working in parallel in some way? Is there a way that you can even work together? And remember that you don't just have to create the next new thing out there. This is an entrepreneurship a school, right? So your entrepreneurs create new things. They create new businesses, new technologies, new solutions, new things. New doesn't always mean completely different. It can also be just a better way of doing something, right? So don't just always strive for just throwing away the old and bringing in the new all the time. Sometimes it's just a different way of working, okay? It's actually taking a lot of things that already exist out there and just doing them in a better way. There's a lot of great solutions we have out there for a lot of problems. We're just not utilizing them effectively. And there's a lot of need for innovation in that area as well. So I just want to end this by thanking you for inviting me here, for having me come and talk to you. This is an image from our latest summit that we had in Bangalore just in August last year with several of our students present. It was a great honor to be able to speak with you. I would love it for you to, if you have any questions for me, you can either, if I don't know if this platform allows this, but otherwise, please come and talk to me. Please feel free to write me, connect with me on LinkedIn or on the on social media of various types. I'm on social media, or you can email me as well. And I'd love to hear from you. So thank you so much.
Thank you. I mean, I was hooked up to your session. It's very insightful, and so many things we actually have connected with your activities, initiatives, and things that you do for the nature, for the world. If the nature is not in a good state, we will not sustain, or we will not going to live for a while. So this is very
Yeah,
important that we take care of our nature, for future generations, and also for ourselves. uh, this is like like a wake up call. We know these things, but when you hear it, it actually creates an awareness among us, and
yeah,
it drives us to do things that actually may be better for people, planet. So this is very, very wonderful, and insightful knowledge and information that you have shared with us. Thank you so much for that. So basically, we have
sure.
two questions. Just a minute. So one question is to build knowledge-based community. We need to empower people, and we need to build more leaders. So what skills are necessary to master to be a community leader?
Oh, it's a
And
great question.
second question is being one of the largest exporters of RMG. How can Bangladesh leverage advantages of circular economy to reduce carbon emission?
Those are two great questions. I'll take the first one first because I have a very simple
Yeah,
answer, and I said
yeah.
it during my talk. To be a community leader, I would start by improving your ability to listen. I think we don't emphasize enough in our teaching, in our schooling, how to listen. It seems like such an obvious thing. Of course, you listen to people, but do you really listen to them? Think about it when next time you have a conversation with someone, right? Are you really taking in their perspective? Are you really thinking about, okay, what are they actually trying to say here? What are they doing? Just sitting quietly and listening, and not just, oh, I got to say something in response. This case, I'm being asked a question, so I have to prepare a response. Sure, but in many cases, it's good when you start a meeting. Do you start it by talking or do you start it by listening, right? And I really think that the key thing to being an effective community leader is by being able to better listen to people around you, whether that your community is a workplace, like an office space, whether your community is a village, whether your community is a whole country, because you're a country leader. Listening, I think, is the number one skill that we don't push enough and that we don't really build enough in order to be better community leaders. That's what I'd answer for the first one. And yeah, so I brought up circular textiles. I was really excited that was caught up on, because of course I know Bangladesh being such a huge producer of in the textile industry. So I did bring that up for that particular reason. That is one of our focus areas as well, because obviously India also has a large textile, and textile waste is a massive problem. So there is a lot of possibilities for better recycling, but it actually requires, and this is not, I'm going to tell you right now, I'm not an expert here as I'm an ecologist, but since I'm working with this program and we do have this project on circular textiles, I'm listening and learning a lot from other experts around us. So we really need to reassess the entire value chain of where our textiles come from, right? Because if they are not made in a way that allows them to be either recycled or broken down, yes, there is some opportunity for biodegradable textiles, but that biodegradable materials, they still need a lot of work. And obviously using natural textiles does improve this process. Natural textiles like cotton, for example, and others, and getting those from a sustainable fashion is always an improved thing. But even for our synthetic textiles that we're using, understanding how to create them in such a way that they can be reused more efficiently. I have been we work with some of the textile recyclers in India, and the process of recycling textiles is very complicated because most garments are actually made of multiple types of textiles, multiple types of materials, and actually being able to recycle them is quite a difficult process of separating them. So really looking at the entire value chain and understanding how can we maximize the ability to reuse materials at each and every step. Another big use, not just for carbon emissions, but we use a lot of water when we make textiles. Textiles use enormous amounts of water, and being able to actually utilize less water in that process. There's a lot of technologies available for that. So there are actually a lot of people thinking about this, and there is a lot of work being done. And honestly, Mohammed, I would love it if you wanted to contact me. I would also connect you to people who are much smarter than I am on this topic, and who are working on this in our network and can maybe give you some tips on how to work on that. That's actually a lot of what I do because I have 2,000 people to reach out to. So I often reach out out to them. But I think this is a very important area and one where Bangladesh can absolutely become a leader. And it's a great place for a lot of entrepreneurship as well. There's a lot of business opportunities in the circular economy in the textile industry. So if any of the listeners are interested in that, it's a huge area, and also an area where you can make a really positive difference for the planet.
Great. Thank you so much. People with like-minded people should connect, and they should use the resources like knowledge and the network. They should utilize it. Like sometimes people say, in a metaphoric way, the bad people, they are very united. But like, when good people are united and do things for the world, for the nature, or for the society, impact must take place there. So, Mr. Shannon, thank you so much, and we would love to explore joint collaboration, how we can work together.
Yes.
As you are very expert on that, and to have you as a speaker, like such an international speaker like you. You are faculty. You are you work as a faculty. You have diversified work experience, so it adds a lot of value to our session and for the audience. Like it's just like a very enrichful information and knowledge for them, and it's like a wake up
Thank you.
call, and it is going to create an awareness among them that what is going on. Like sometimes we don't focus on this kind of like initiatives, news that is related to nature and like climate change stuff like that. But this kind of awareness, when people are working on that, like this is going to create a change in their mindset. So thank you so much, and we
Absolutely.
on behalf of School of Entrepreneurship Development, we'd like to share our gratitude. Thank you so much, and best wishes for your endeavors. And if there is any way we can connect and collaborate, join this movement with you, it will be a great honor for us.
It is open. Our network is open. It's free. It doesn't cost any money. We work hard, and every new membership that we get, every new collaboration is a chance for us to learn and grow. So we always see this as an opportunity for us to gain new knowledge from you. So we would love that. I would be very
Great. And
excited
also
to do that.
one thing, you mentioned student ambassador. So
Yes.
if there is any way we can engage students who are in the
Yes.
university, so there are thousands of students who would like to like connect and work in this wonderful and impactful movement. So we can
Yes.
also work and connect them with your network.
So we'll be opening our call for our next round of applications, and as I said,
Great,
especially for the late undergraduate, if you've finishing your undergraduate, you can actually enter our master's training program, and
great.
we'll be advertising that in February, so just a month from now. So stay tuned to our social media. I think you can share our social media links
Yeah,
with
yeah,
your yeah. So, and
definitely.
you can see, and you can of course apply. We'd love to have members from our neighbor country come to us. So yeah, that would be great.
Great. Thank you so much, and it's a great honor for us. And have a good day, and wish you luck.
Nice to meet you all. Thank you for the honor of inviting me. And yes, I would love to work with us. So please do connect with me. That would be great. Thanks.
Great. Thank you. Bye bye.
Bye.